Hi Karan, my name is Shraddha Prasad. I'm with the Yale School of Management and I'll be conducting your interview today. So welcome.
Good afternoon, Shraddha. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Here's my resume.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So just to get us started, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Of course. So growing up, I think I had a very conventional upbringing. I grew up in a very sheltered background, a very goal-oriented family as well. I think that goal-oriented upbringing also translated into me being very focused, and that focused upbringing then eventually took me to IIT. I think as soon as I did arrive on the campus, those blinders that I was brought up with just came off. I was exposed to so many different things that were so rewarding in their own way. I was a part of the drama club. I was a mentor and a residence coordinator in my hostel, so I really enjoyed having a leadership role as well. But in addition to that, I was extremely focused on my academics. The sort of collaborative and community aspect that IIT provided was absolutely fantastic, and I thoroughly enjoyed that as well. However, at the same time, I was very professionally focused as well. I had 2 internships that firmly reflected my interests. I worked in the finance world as well as with an oil company, and then eventually took up a job at Shell. Taking up the job at Shell was great because it meant financial stability as well as professional stability, which was wonderful in a lot of ways. However, the job did involve a lot of travel to very remote locations, and this travel really took its toll on me, because not only was it long hours, but we were also going to places very, very far off, and a lot of this time by myself made me think that, am I doing something that really is rewarding in its own way? And the short answer to that was unfortunately no. I wanted to do something that was not only intellectually stimulating, but also financially rewarding, and something that was making me believe that I was helping the world. So I think a lot of this off-site drilling that was taking place made me realize of the environmental impact that what I was doing was having on the environment, and it didn't sit well with me at all. That all taken up, I took the plunge and started working with a small startup in Bangalore, which was everything I wanted and everything that I had hoped for as well. And I think as soon as I started, it just felt like, as I started at IIT, the blinders had just come off and I felt liberated.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Karan. Okay, Karan, our next question for you is a little bit about your leadership style. Could you tell me about your current leadership style and maybe how it's evolved over the past few years?
Absolutely. So my father was a disciplinarian. He took a very, authoritative way of bringing us up. So for as long as I can remember, that was the only effective leadership style. Sort of lead from the top and be very rigid with your beliefs. I went to IIT and then Shell shortly after, and both of those had a very rigid structure to them. So it sort of felt very natural with the way I'd been brought up, and I fit in very well. I was very confident about it as well. I think the hardest thing for me was actually making the jump to the startup world. It felt different, it felt new, and I was slightly confused. I think the biggest reason for that was that I was observing a lot of more empathetic-based approach to the way people were leading their teams. I stuck to what I knew because that's how I knew best, and really realized that that was not the way to go. On a solar panel project that I was working with a group of engineers and assistants, I was working them double hours, but unfortunately we were still not able to get the job done in time. I took a step back and I tried to understand what the problem was. One of my marketing team members actually came up to me and he said that he noticed that I was overworking my employees and it was not being the most productive for them as well. I took a step back again and I thought maybe this is not the most effective leadership style. And that was, in my opinion, where it really evolved and really changed. I understood that actually taking a more individual approach to what I was trying to get out of my team was a more successful way to go about it. So that's what I did. I tried to focus on their individual needs, and that's where I became more empathetic to the situation. I realized that actually understanding what my teammates needed and wanted from the project was going to be the most effective way out of the solution. And that came as a change, but seeing someone else come to me and understanding what my leadership style was sort of developed that empathy in me as well. So I think ever since that day, I think that my leadership style has been much more empathetic. But having said that, I'm constantly looking to evolve. I'm learning from people around me, and that's exactly what I did once I arrived at Bangalore on the startup scene. And I hope to continue to develop my leadership style as I move on.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So, Karan, to get us started with our next question, why don't you tell us about the biggest risk that you've taken either at work or outside of work?
Certainly. So for as long as I can remember, structure and stability have always driven all my decisions in life. I think it's for that reason that leaving Shell and taking that leap of faith was the biggest risk that I've taken. I think giving up on that structure and stability, that I had at Shell was a huge decision that I had to make. And growing up in a society where success is defined by a very one-directional, linear fashion, I had to make the call whether I wanted to stick on that path or sort of forge my own path. And I think while my peers at the time really detested, I loved that linear path because it had always worked for me. I soon realized that I was always seeking the approval of society and not focusing as much on my happiness. And in the effort to focus more on my happiness, I wanted to veer off that path. And I think moving away from the lifestyle at Shell and moving into the startup life in Bangalore really did prove to be a risky move initially, but one that was extremely rewarding moving forward. I think in the same light, wanting a new experience and wanting to explore my options further at Yale, I'm going to be able to find myself in a unique way. I'm going to take another risk that in its own time will be that much more rewarding. So I think bringing it back the whole circle, leaving Shell was extremely difficult, but extremely rewarding. And now this next step in my life is going to be rewarding as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.